Hey, it is now. It is time for CXD now, customer experience design, and the time is now. And I'm really excited and grateful for IBM Commerce and particularly the Journey Designer team to be sponsoring this so that we could dive deeper into this really important subject. And what I perceive to be a really huge zeitgeist moment. It's also the same time that Brian Solis is coming out with a wonderful new book that I've had a chance to review already, X the Book. And we're going to be diving more into that as well as the broader topics around customer experience design. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And you're going to be heading off to Europe again this Sunday to be talking a little bit more about this subject. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm going to London to speak about it at a Profit event, then at a NetSuite event, and then I fly off to Berlin for NeoCom to talk about it there, and then come back home on Friday.
Wow. And that's why we're doing this as a pre-series. And in fact, as it turns out, I think this is going to work out a lot better. And what I'm hoping to do is break this into a couple of segments around each of the episode topics that we've lined up and be able to include each of these different segments across the entire series for the next month and a half or so to really help people understand this topic more, why it's needed, what it's about, how to do it. And I think that's the unique thing about your book. Not only is it beautiful, but it handles the why, the what, and the how. And that's why what we're going to do here with this series is talk about the when, and the when is now. And it's all win as you look through your book. I really, I hate to sound like I'm blowing smoke up somebody's arse, but Ryan and I have been friends for a long time, going back to the second bar camp. And when I got a chance to actually see the book and hold the laser print in my hand, it really blew me away. Not only from the design perspective, because it's beautifully designed by Mechanism in conjunction with Brian's art direction, but the content is just stellar. But let's leave the book in the background for a minute now that I've given it a nice little promo. And again, thank the IBM Commerce team for helping me. But what I want to start with is the basics, because I still see a lot of people out there who goes, wait, customer experience, isn't that UX? Isn't that user experience? Isn't that what you really mean? But it's not. So what is customer experience? And then what specifically is customer experience design?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's start with user experience, because I think it's one of the greatest assets within any organization. I think it's just sort of unfortunately not utilized in a way that utilizes its full potential. And I hope to change that with the book. CX is sort of this discipline of customer experience that a lot of people, I think, misunderstand or misinterpret. I think a lot of people have different definitions for it, depending on the aspect of their work, whether it's customer support, customer service, marketing, design, what have you. But I think really at the end of the day, I just want to look at it from a very human perspective, and that's what I try to do in the book.
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference. Right?
Yeah, it's so strange to me, like how much research I do that human beings are rarely in the equation. It's ridiculous, and I think that's technology is, if anything, over the last 50 years has actually got us further away from people, in the name of automation and scale and efficiency. And if anything, today with social and mobile and real time, it's actually allowing us to be more human. It's actually allowing us to see people and get to know them in much more amazing ways. And we can't apply this old philosophy, this legacy-based thinking of technology and people in this incredible era. So customer experience is an emotion that people are going to have, right? Throughout the entire customer journey, at every single touch point. And that to me is what customer experience is. And today businesses react to it, right? They market, they support, they sell, and they don't necessarily think about, well, what should the customer experience be? And I don't mean surprise and delight. I don't mean remarkable. I don't mean the things that we always hear in terms of great customer experience. I mean, what do I want someone to feel right now? How do I want someone, what are the next steps I want someone to take? How do I remove friction? And how does that ratchet up to the brand? So customer experience really is, to me, experience. And that's why the book is really focused on experience at a higher level than just customer experience.
And again, it's xthebook.com for those of you looking to find out where to pre-order it. It comes out on October 19th. But I want to come back to this holistic approach because, we've been talking about holistic approach needed for so long that too many people inside of a company focus on the one thing in front of them instead of understanding the whole of the business, the whole of the customer experience. And you've actually developed an equation in the book for explaining this a little more discreetly to help people kind of wrap their heads around it. Could you talk about that equation that you've developed?
Yeah, well, are you talking about the BX
Yep.
plus UX plus CX? Yeah. So, well, hey, check this out. Look what I got in the mail today.
Ah.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's unbelievable, and that I think that's in here somewhere. But I probably should have earmarked that before we hopped on the call or the on the interwebs. So the idea
I think it was 4.2 is what I remember.
Get
Is the
out of here.
section.
See, that
Because
is amazing.
I remarked how remarkable that was to be related to the answer to everything. What's the meaning of life? And
that's brilliant, man. Because you're exactly right. That's one of the reasons why we had that naming convention. We got rid of the table of contents so that we could have iterations like 4.2 and make it easier to find it. And here it is. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. That's phenomenal. That's really sharp. So we know UX, but explain the other letters and how it all comes together again, a little more discreetly.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for noticing that. That's amazing. So these are all disciplines within the organization that are sort of operating independently, but technically they should be converging. So BX is brand experience, and there are some of the most sophisticated advertising agencies and design agencies are working on brand architecture, right? So you have companies like Profit, you have companies like Interbrand, you have some high-end like Chiat but they developed this whole brand architecture of what's the brand supposed to represent, what does it mean, et cetera. And then you have user experience, which is technically not just the design of pages and sites and apps, but also sort of how it navigates a journey, right? And it's incredibly scientific and in my opinion, very beautiful. And then you have customer experience, which is all of the work of which then contributes to how someone moves through the journey. And how are those touch points designed? How is the journey designed? What technology you use to support that journey, et cetera. But the equation was really about, these are all important things within the organization, but you can't have them operate independently, right? Because the customer experience is something that people are going to have, right? And they're going to share it. And it's not necessarily something that you can just hope works. You have to actually make it complementary. And the problem is that all of these disparate teams are focusing on experience from their own regard, right? Like to their own work, their own standards, their own metrics. They don't even talk to one another. So essentially what you have are all of these competing micro experiences that don't add up to the brand. So I call it the experience divide in the book, where the experience you think people are having and the experience that people are having are in fact not the same. And these three things are actually moving that further and further apart, even though you're trying to do the right thing. So the equation says all of these things equal X, because BX, CX, UX, the one thing they all have in common is working towards some type of an experience. So bring them together, work together and collaborate, but define not just a brand architecture or anything, but experience architecture. So it's been a buzzword that's been used with little definition or standardization over the years, but I'm saying that equation ratchets up to the idea of experience architecture, and to me it's the future of brand, it's the future of business.
Well, and it's very much, as you're kind of hinting at, attitudinal in terms of how we come to approach it too. Not only just like the practical, but like where are we coming from? And from my perspective, that's really about this idea of I hate doing the versioning, as you know, Mr. PR 2.0. I really do, but it really is customer centricity 2.0. It's about this radical customer centricity with full empathy instead of just paying lip service to that idea, right?
Yeah, it's actually the perfect word is empathy. A lot of businesses will say they're customer centric, right? I don't think I've ever talked to an executive who says, hey, Brian, I'm going to tell you a secret. We don't really care about our customers at all, right? I think they all do. I think they just don't know how to do it. When you actually study the investments companies make, both in technology, but also in processes and systems, right? Budgets for customer engagement, all of these things. You actually realize that I think there's a stat that only 7% of companies are truly customer centric, and it's a staggering number. But this is why when you also look at research that shows that customers will pay upwards of 25% more for a product if they believe they're going to get a good experience or a better experience, you got to recognize that we're operating from a threshold of mediocrity, right? You can only do things better if you care about this. So that's why I think that experience, whether it's 2.0 or 3.0, it's incredibly important. And the reason why it's a completely new iteration is because it requires an entirely new foundation and perspective in order to do this right. And I'll just say one more thing. Sorry to be long-winded. It's our cognitive bias that gets in the way of all of this, because we're sitting in positions where we have to make decisions about the future of customer engagement or the future of business or the future of brand or whatever seat you have within the organization, based on our own experience, right? How we got to where we are, the confines of which we operate, the standards of excellence that exist, and those are all rooted in the past. And this is what makes it so hard, is that essentially what we're looking at is that the customer is so different. The employee as well is so different. It's not like iterative the way that it's been generationally in the past. It's radically different. And there's a lack of awareness and empathy, and that word will probably come up a bunch, to actually get in front of it, right? I think naturally we're skeptical. I mean, just look at the news going around in the last 24 hours about the sorority that attended the Arizona Diamondbacks game, and how at one point during the game they were a full 2 minutes had the camera on them while they were all taking selfies, and the announcers started to sound like those parents. They were basically, they were politely ridiculing them, but what you walk away from that moment was, wow, they sounded old. You might not understand or agree with or appreciate, what they were doing or how they were behaving, but it's the reality of that's how they behave, that's how they communicate, right? And if you can't actually be relevant to that, if you can't appreciate it, you can't innovate. You can't be relevant if you are already disclaiming it or disassociating with yourself of it, or just putting it down. So that's how executives have to think, is like, look, in order to create a meaningful experience, I have to be able to appreciate that the experience that I want is not the experience that they want.
Yeah.
And I can't hold on to that anymore.
Yeah, and it's really more than walking in their shoes, and it's more than outside in thinking, another buzzword that's been thrown around without a lot of meaning over the past few years, unfortunately. And it really is about this real respect for helping other people be successful. It's not just empathy, but also compassion and true understanding behind it. And all too often, profit trumps all that other feeling about helping your customers be successful. But I want to get to a more specific thing inside of this. And in fact, that comes down to the journey map itself. And so, you actually talk about experience architectures and the experience flow and then the journey map. So what is the role of the journey map inside of it? And how do you describe the journey map to people who haven't seen one yet?
Yeah, well, there's the book goes into a lot of detail around journey mapping. I'll give you a quick bit of history. While I was writing this book, I couldn't get my mind fully around it, because it's a real complex subject, right? I didn't want to just say, hey, this is what's happening. I wanted to be able to help people understand this is what you need to do. And I couldn't rightfully say, hey, go do a journey map and all your problems will be solved. So I had to figure out what's the right metaphor and how do I reverse engineer what the right journey map should be. And in order to do that, I borrowed from Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. and looked at it from a perspective of friction and then optimization. And so that's why I stopped writing the book and went to WTF, which was all based on the 4 moments of truth and the hero's journey, to start to introduce people to see the journey not for what it is, but what it could be. And that was the stark moment in sort of the evolution of this thinking, was that we tend to be iterative when we approach it by the journey as it exists. What can we fix? What technology can we upgrade? Without actually saying, holy moly, customers are hacking the journey, and they're creating their own journey, and they're learning how to do this, and the best we got for them is responsive design. And that doesn't necessarily work. We haven't even stopped to think, and I even say this in the book. I said, what's the point of a website in 2015? It's very similar to why we were doing websites in the 90s. Digital brochures. We talk to ourselves, not to people. We design for ourselves, not for people. And so to me, the idea of experience architecture and journey mapping was to say, look, this is what the journey is. These are where there are problems. But now what I really want to see is, what could we develop that's innovative, that is intuitive and natural and organic to the way people use their phones, or to the way that people want to use, how they, just think about the BuzzFeed generation. Like, how many words can they process until they need an animated GIF? I mean, all of these things could reinvent what the journey is. And then lastly is all this work I've been doing with Google around micro moments, and how you only have X amount of seconds. Once someone starts the journey, they don't go through this journey or this funnel. They come in and out, maybe as many as 12 times in a day, to iterate towards a decision. And how do you rethink the entire journey for those moments too? So journey mapping is this lovely art and science of going through what the customer journey is. And I believe, and this is what the book is about, is how you can then transform that into a series of micro journeys that are going to work for people differently, their way. And it makes the whole idea of experience architecture not only tangible, but now you need experience architects who are going to then design this.
And think about the whole of it as opposed to the different parts of it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
today it's all constructed by parts.
That's really phenomenal and so important. For those of you just joining us, I'm talking with Brian Solis, the author, and I'm going to call you Solis and Solis. I'm going to change back and forth. So sometimes I'll make your mom happy. Sometimes I'll make your friends who mispronounce it happy, and we'll make it good. But Brian has recently written, and coming out on October 19th, X the Book. Today we're sponsored in part by IBM Commerce and their new product Journey Designer, which is one of the reasons for bringing this together and doing CXD now, because the time for customer experience design is now.